18 months can change everything, yet somehow not enough. The nightmares still came 3 times a week. In them, James stood over me with that insurance policy in his hands, his smile never reaching his eyes. I would wake up gasping, my hand automatically reaching for the empty space beside me, a habit I couldn't seem to break even after all this time. The morning sun filtered through my new apartment's curtains as I sipped my coffee, staring at the email that had just arrived. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Subject line: Adams-Wilson case. Update: urgent contact request. My stomach dropped as I clicked it open. Professor Adams, we have located James Adams and Rebecca Wilson. Please contact Special Agent Michaels at your earliest convenience to discuss next steps. After almost 2 years of wondering if they had gotten away with everything, those 16 words changed everything. I immediately called Daniel. They found them, I said when he answered, my voice steadier than I expected. I just got the same email, Daniel replied. I could hear papers shuffling in the background. His architecture firm was preparing for a major project presentation today. Special Agent Michaels, what do you think it means? I don't know, but I'm calling him right now. Wait for me, Daniel said. I'll cancel my morning meeting and be at your place in 20 minutes. Since that fateful night at the restaurant, Daniel Matthews had become more than just the other betrayed spouse. After months of cautious friendship built on shared trauma, we had gradually allowed ourselves to explore something more. He still kept his own apartment, but most nights he stayed with me. We were taking things slowly, both too scarred to rush. Agent Michaels answered on the second ring. His voice was direct, professional. Professor Adams, thank you for returning my call promptly. We need you and Mr. Matthews to come to our field office this afternoon. There have been significant developments. You found them, I said, stating the obvious. Yes, they were apprehended in Bali yesterday morning local time. They're being processed for extradition now. After all this time? How? I asked. That's part of what we need to discuss in person, he replied cryptically. Can you be at our downtown office at 2 o'clock? I confirmed we would be there just as my doorbell rang. Daniel had made it in record time. I opened the door to find him looking as unsettled as I felt. His normally immaculate architect's attire slightly rumpled, as if he'd dressed in a hurry. They're bringing them back, I told him, leading him to my kitchen table. Agent Michaels wants to meet with us at 2. Daniel ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture I'd come to recognize as his response to stress. Do you think you're ready to see them again? After everything? That was the question I'd been avoiding. In the months after James and Rebecca disappeared, I'd imagined this moment countless times. In my fantasies, I was strong, composed, looking James in the eye as justice was served. But now that it might actually happen, I wasn't so sure. I don't know, I admitted. But I need closure, Daniel. We both do. He nodded, reaching across the table to take my hand. His touch had become a comfort I hadn't expected to find again after James. Whatever happens, we face it together, he said firmly. The FBI field office was an imposing building of glass and steel downtown. Agent Michaels met us in the lobby, a tall, serious man with prematurely gray hair and eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. He led us through security and up to a conference room where a woman in a sharp suit was waiting. This is Assistant U.S. Attorney Elena Cortez, Agent Michaels introduced us. She's leading the prosecution. Please, sit down. Cortez gestured to chairs across from her. What I'm about to share with you will be surprising, but it may explain some of the inconsistencies you've been wondering about. She opened a folder and slid a photograph across the table. It showed Rebecca Wilson, looking remarkably different. Thinner, haircut short, eyes haunted. This was taken yesterday during processing, Cortez explained. Ms. Wilson has been cooperating with our investigation for the past 6 months. Cooperating? Daniel's voice was sharp with disbelief. She fled the country with him. Not willingly, Agent Michaels said quietly. At least, not entirely. Cortez continued, her expression grave. According to Ms. Wilson, When you confronted them at the restaurant, Professor Adams, it accelerated a timeline James had already set in motion. When he discovered you knew about the affair and the financial crimes, he gave her an ultimatum: flee with him or be framed for everything. That doesn't make sense, I interjected. She's the one who gave me the evidence against him in the first place. Exactly, Cortez nodded, which is why we believe her account. She claims she gave you that evidence as insurance, never expecting you would act on it so quickly. She thought she had more time to plan her own exit. My mind raced, trying to fit this new information into the narrative I'd constructed. So, when we confronted them, James discovered what she'd done. Michaels finished my thought, but by then, their finances were too intertwined, their escape too imminent. He couldn't leave without her without raising suspicions. Daniel leaned forward, skepticism clear on his face. And we're supposed to believe she's been his prisoner all this time? Not exactly a prisoner, Cortez clarified. More like an accomplice under duress. According to her testimony, James became increasingly paranoid and controlling after they fled. He held onto her passport, monitored her communications, kept her isolated. 6 months ago, Michaels continued, she managed to contact our international operations team through an internet cafe while James was meeting with some associates. She's been feeding us information since then, helping us track their movements. The room fell silent as Daniel and I processed this information. Could it be true? Had Rebecca been caught in her own trap, forced to flee with a man who was now her captor rather than her lover? Part of me wanted to dismiss it as another manipulation, but something about it rang true. It would explain the contradiction that had always bothered me. Why she would warn me, then run. There's more, Cortez said, breaking the silence. The information Ms. Wilson provided led us to discover something disturbing. James had taken out additional insurance policies on both of you. I felt the blood drain from my face. Daniel reached for my hand under the table, squeezing it tightly. Are you saying he was planning to... I couldn't finish the sentence. We have evidence suggesting he was exploring ways to eliminate loose ends, Michaels said grimly, including both of you. The room seemed to tilt slightly. All those nights I'd lain awake, wondering if I was being paranoid for changing my locks, installing security systems, jumping at shadows. They hadn't been paranoia after all. When will they be back in the country? Daniel asked, his voice tight. James is being transported now, Cortez replied. Rebecca arrived early this morning. She's in protective custody until we determine the full extent of her involvement and culpability. We'd like you both to consider testifying, Michaels added. Your statements would significantly strengthen our case. I need to see her, I said suddenly, surprising even myself. Rebecca, I need to hear this from her directly. Daniel turned to me, concern etched on his face. Are you sure that's a good idea? No, I admitted, but I've spent 18 months trying to make sense of what happened. If there's any chance of understanding why she did what she did, why she warned me only to disappear with him, I need to know. Michaels and Cortez exchanged glances. It might be possible to arrange a meeting, Cortez said carefully, but not today. We need to complete her formal deposition first. As we left the building an hour later, the bright afternoon sun seemed at odds with the darkness of what we'd learned. James hadn't just betrayed me, he'd been planning something much worse. And Rebecca, who I'd painted as the villain alongside him in my mind for so long, might have saved my life with that envelope of evidence. What are you thinking? Daniel asked as we walked to his car. I'm thinking that nothing about this story is what we thought, I replied, my voice distant even to my own ears. And I'm wondering what else we don't know. The next morning, I woke to the sound of rain against my windows. I lay in bed, watching water streak down the glass, thinking about how different my life was now. 2 years ago, I'd been Melissa Adams, wife of James, living in a beautiful house with what I thought was a happy marriage. Now, I was just Melissa, living alone in an apartment, piecing together a new life from the wreckage of the old one. Daniel had stayed late last night, talking through everything we'd learned. Neither of us slept much. How could we? The realization that James hadn't just been planning to leave me, but potentially to harm me, had reopened wounds I thought were finally starting to heal. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Coffee before your meeting with Rebecca? I can pick something up on my way over." I smiled, despite everything. These small gestures of care had become the foundation of our relationship. I texted back a simple, "Yes, please," and forced myself out of bed. By 10 o'clock, we were back at the FBI field office. Agent Michaels met us in the same conference room as yesterday, but this time the atmosphere felt even more tense. "We need to prepare you for what you might hear today," he said, his expression grave. Rebecca's full deposition revealed some disturbing details about James's plans and the extent of his criminal network. "Criminal network?" I repeated. "I thought this was just about the embezzlement from North Star." Michaels shook his head. "That was just the beginning. According to Rebecca, James has connections to organized financial crime across Southeast Asia. The $2 million he embezzled from North Star was small compared to what he was involved in overseas." Daniel's posture stiffened beside me. So this whole time, while he was playing the devoted husband to Melissa and Rebecca was playing the perfect wife to me, they were building something much bigger, Michaels confirmed. Or rather, James was. "We now believe Rebecca was initially a willing participant who got in way over her head. And now she's cutting a deal to save herself," Daniel said bitterly. "She's providing crucial evidence," Michaels countered. "Without her cooperation, we might never have found them, and certainly wouldn't have uncovered the extent of the operation." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "I still want to talk to her." Michaels nodded and led us down a long hallway to a small, windowless room. Inside sat Rebecca Wilson, almost unrecognizable from the polished, confident woman I'd confronted in the restaurant bathroom 18 months ago. Her once perfect hair was cut in a short, practical style. She wore no makeup, and her designer clothes had been replaced by a simple gray sweater and jeans. But the most striking change was in her eyes. The sharp, ambitious gleam had been replaced by something wary and exhausted. When she saw us enter, she straightened slightly, her hands clasped tightly on the table in front of her. For a long moment, none of us spoke. "Melissa, Daniel," her voice was quiet, lacking the self-assured tone I remembered. "Thank you for coming." Daniel remained standing near the door, arms crossed defensively. I forced myself to take the seat across from her. "Why?" I asked simply. The question contained multitudes. Why did you have an affair with my husband? Why did you warn me? Why did you run? Rebecca looked down at her hands. "I've been asking myself the same question for 18 months. She took a shaky breath. "At first, it was ambition. James approached me 6 months after I started working for him. He said he'd noticed my potential, that I was wasted as an assistant. He offered to mentor me, to bring me into special projects with bigger opportunities, more money. And you jumped at the chance," Daniel said coldly from his position by the door. Rebecca flinched but nodded. "Yes, it started as business, late meetings, strategic planning. Then personal boundaries started blurring. He was charming, powerful, seemed to see something in me that no one else did, including me," Daniel added. "I thought I was in control," she continued, pain evident in her voice. "By the time I realized what was really happening, how deep the financial crimes went, I was already implicated. Signatures on documents, access to accounts, meetings with his associates. That doesn't explain why you warned me," I interjected. Rebecca looked up at me, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "3 months before you found out about us, I discovered something in James's private files. Insurance policies on both of you, travel documents with alternate identities, and—" she hesitated. "Research on untraceable poisons." A chill ran through me. "He was planning to kill us." She nodded. "I confronted him. He told me it was just contingency planning, that he'd never actually do it. But something in his eyes—" she shuddered at the memory. That's when I realized I was in danger too. There were similar documents for me. An insurance policy I never knew about. Exit strategies that didn't include me. So you tried to save yourself, I said. I tried to save all of us, she corrected softly. I started gathering evidence, planning an escape. I intended to go to the authorities, but I needed enough proof to protect myself from prosecution. That night, you found his phone. It accelerated everything. I needed you to know the danger you were in, but I wasn't ready to run yet. So you gave me the evidence, I said, pieces finally clicking into place. Yes, I thought it would give you time to protect yourself while I finalized my own exit. I never imagined you'd confront us so quickly. Daniel finally moved from his position by the door, approaching the table. What happened at the restaurant after we left? Rebecca's expression darkened. James realized what I'd done. He was furious, but calculating. He said our plan had to move forward immediately. That night, he told me I had two choices. Go with him as planned or stay behind and take the fall for everything. He threatened you, I said, not a question. He reminded me that my signature was on dozens of incriminating documents, that he had recordings of me in meetings with his associates, that without his protection, I'd spend decades in prison. She looked at Daniel, her voice breaking. He said he would tell the authorities that I had manipulated you for years, used our marriage to build credibility, while I helped James steal millions. Daniel's expression remained hard, but I saw something flicker in his eyes. Doubt, perhaps, or the first crack in his certainty about who Rebecca had been in their marriage. In Bali, she continued, things got worse. James became paranoid, controlling. He held my passport, monitored my communications, rarely let me out alone. It took me 6 months to find a way to contact the FBI without him knowing. Why should we believe any of this? Daniel asked, his voice strained. You've lied to both of us for years. Rebecca nodded, accepting the accusation. You shouldn't believe me without proof. That's why I've given Agent Michaels everything. Emails, account numbers, recordings I managed to make, locations of hidden assets. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you both to know the truth and to be careful. James has people who work for him, people who might still carry out his plans even with him in custody. A knock at the door interrupted us. Agent Michaels poked his head in. Sorry to interrupt, but we've just received word. James Adams is being transported from the airport now. He'll arrive at the Federal Detention Center within the hour. The reality of it hit me suddenly. After 18 months of nightmares and looking over my shoulder, James would be back on American soil, just miles away from where I stood. I wasn't sure if I felt relief or terror. He'll be in custody, Rebecca said, reading my expression. But that doesn't mean you're safe. Not yet. James plans for every contingency. What do you mean? I asked. I mean, he has people, lawyers, private investigators, former military contractors, people who are paid very well to handle problems for him. Her eyes met mine, intense and urgent. The FBI knows some of them, but not all. Until they're identified, you need to be careful. Both of you. Daniel moved closer to me, his hand finding my shoulder in a protective gesture. We've been careful for 18 months, he said. We can handle a bit longer. As we left the interview room, my mind was spinning with new information and recalibrated perceptions. Rebecca Wilson wasn't just the home-wrecking assistant who'd had an affair with my husband. She was also a victim of his manipulation, a co-conspirator who'd tried to warn me, and now, potentially, our ally against whatever James might still have planned. Do you believe her? Daniel asked quietly as we walked toward the exit. I considered the question carefully. I think I do. It explains the contradictions that never made sense before. And her warning about James's contingency plans feels genuine. Daniel nodded slowly. I need time to process all this. For so long, I've thought of her as the villain in our story. Maybe there's only one villain, I said, and we're about to face him again. 3 days later, I stood in the back of a crowded courtroom, my heart pounding as the side door opened. 4 U.S. Marshals escorted James Adams into the room for his arraignment. I'd prepared myself for this moment, or thought I had, but seeing him in person after 18 months sent shockwaves through my system. He looked both changed and eerily the same. The expensive suits had been replaced by a standard-issue orange jumpsuit. His once perfect hair was longer, slightly disheveled. He'd lost weight, his face more angular than I remembered. But the way he carried himself, that confident, calculated posture, remained intact. He scanned the courtroom with that familiar assessing gaze, the one I'd once mistaken for thoughtfulness rather than predatory evaluation. When his eyes found me, he showed no surprise, just a slight narrowing, a micro-expression I'd learned to recognize during our marriage as his mind shifting into strategic mode. Daniel's hand found mine, squeezing gently. We'd decided to attend together, a united front against the man who had nearly destroyed both our lives. All rise. The United States District Court for the Southern District is now in session. The Honorable Judge Eleanor Martinez presiding. The proceedings moved with formal efficiency. James was charged with multiple counts of wire fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, and conspiracy. When asked how he pleaded, his voice rang out clear and confident. "Not guilty, Your Honor." I hadn't expected anything different. James would never admit fault, never show weakness. The prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Elena Cortez, argued strongly against bail, citing flight risk and the severity of the charges. James's attorney, an expensive-looking man with a perfectly tailored suit, countered that his client had significant ties to the community and was willing to surrender his passport and submit to electronic monitoring. Judge Martinez was unmoved. Bail denied. The defendant will remain in custody, pending trial. As James was led away, he turned slightly, his eyes finding mine again. This time, there was something else there. A slight smile that sent chills down my spine. It wasn't the look of a defeated man. It was the look of someone who still had cards to play. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed around us. The case had attracted significant media attention. The scale of the financial crimes, the international manhunt, the scandalous personal elements. Daniel and I had prepared a simple statement, declining further comment until the trial concluded. We pushed through the crowd toward Daniel's car, both of us tense with the knowledge that whatever game James was playing, it wasn't over yet. That evening, Agent Michaels called with disturbing news. "We've been monitoring James's communications since his arrival at the detention center," he explained. "He made one call today, to a law firm we weren't previously tracking. We believe they may be a front for some of his less legitimate business interests." "What does that mean?" I asked, pressing the phone closer to my ear. Daniel watched me from across my living room, concern evident on his face. "It means we're increasing security around both of you," Michaels replied gravely. "Until we can identify and locate all of James's associates, we have to assume he's activated some kind of contingency plan." After the call, I relayed the information to Daniel. We'd both taken a few days off work to deal with the legal proceedings, but reality was beginning to set in. This wasn't going to be a quick resolution. The trial could be months away, and in the meantime, we were potentially still targets. "Maybe we should get out of town for a while," Daniel suggested. "My firm has a project in Denver. I could arrange to oversee it personally, be away for a few weeks." I shook my head. "Running won't solve this. Besides, I have classes to teach. I can't just disappear in the middle of the semester." The thought of putting my life on hold again because of James filled me with a stubborn resistance. I've already let him take too much from me. Daniel's expression softened. "I understand, but promise me you'll be careful. No unnecessary risks, okay?" "I promise." I leaned into him, drawing comfort from his steady presence. "What about you? Are you going to see Rebecca again?" He tensed slightly at the question. "I don't know. Part of me wants answers to questions only she can provide. Another part thinks it might be better to just move forward. Whatever you decide, I'll support you." I told him, meaning it. Despite everything we'd been through together, I knew Daniel's relationship with Rebecca was distinct from mine with James. His wounds were his own to heal. The next morning brought another development. A package arrived at my department office, a thick manila envelope with no return address. Campus security had already screened it for any obvious threats, but I still felt uneasy as I opened it. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. Insurance, in case something happens to me. R.W. Rebecca Wilson. I stared at the drive, unsure whether to plug it into my computer or call Agent Michaels immediately. Caution won out. I contacted the FBI, and within an hour, 2 agents arrived to collect the package. We'll examine the contents in our secure environment, the female agent assured me. If there's anything you need to know, we'll brief you immediately. That afternoon, I met Daniel for lunch at a quiet cafe near campus. The spring weather had finally turned warm, and we sat at an outdoor table trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy amid the chaos. They're analyzing the drive now, I explained between bites of my sandwich. Michaels thinks Rebecca may have sent it as additional protection for us. Daniel nodded thoughtfully. She seemed genuinely afraid of what James might still be capable of. Our conversation paused as my phone rang. Agent Michaels. Professor Adams, we've reviewed the contents of the USB drive. I think you and Mr. Matthews should come in as soon as possible. The urgency in his voice was unmistakable. Daniel and I exchanged worried glances as I ended the call. Now? He asked. Now. Back at the FBI field office, Michaels and Cortez were waiting in what had become our regular conference room. A laptop sat open on the table, and several folders were spread out beside it. The drive contained extensive documentation. Michaels began without preamble. Financial records, emails, photographs, audio recordings. Essentially Rebecca's complete insurance policy against James. And against prosecution herself, Cortez added with a slight frown. Some of this material goes far beyond what she provided in her official cooperation. What does that mean? Daniel asked. It means she's been selectively cooperating, Cortez explained, giving us enough to secure a deal for herself while holding back information that might fully implicate her. Or, Michaels countered, she kept this separate as protection against James's associates. If they knew she had this material, it would make her a target. He turned the laptop toward us. There's something specific you need to see. On the screen was a document titled Contingency Protocols. As Michaels scrolled through it, I felt my blood run cold. It was a detailed playbook for eliminating various liabilities, including Daniel and me. Names, addresses, daily routines, security vulnerabilities, and proposed methods. The level of surveillance that had gone into creating this document was horrifying. This was created over a year ago, Michaels explained, before they fled. According to the metadata, it was last accessed 3 days before you confronted them at the restaurant. So James was already planning. I couldn't finish the sentence. Yes, Cortez confirmed grimly. And there's more. The document includes payment records to various individuals, former military contractors, private investigators, even a corrupt local police officer. Are these people still active? Daniel asked, his architect's mind immediately focusing on the structural threat. That's what we're working to determine, Michaels replied. Some have been identified and are under surveillance. Others are still unknown. The most concerning part, Cortez continued, is this section here. She pointed to a paragraph near the end of the document. It outlines a dead man's switch protocol, actions to be taken automatically if James is arrested or otherwise unable to continue operations. My stomach dropped. So by arresting him, we may have triggered whatever contingency plan he had in place, Michaels confirmed. That's why we're increasing security around both of you, as well as Rebecca. What do we do now? I asked, struggling to process the revelation that James's plans were even more extensive and calculating than I'd imagined. For now, we take precautions, Michaels said. We're assigning officers to monitor both your residences. You'll need to vary your routines. Avoid predictable patterns. And we'd like to place tracking on your vehicles and phones for your protection, he added quickly, seeing my expression. The invasion of privacy bothered me, but not as much as the alternative. I nodded my agreement. There's one more thing, Cortez said, her expression unusually hesitant. Among the files was evidence suggesting James may have had accomplices at your university, Professor Adams. What? I felt as if the floor had dropped from beneath me. Who? We're still investigating, Michaels answered carefully. But there are financial transfers to someone in your department's administration. We don't have a name yet, just evidence of payments. The idea that someone at the university, someone I worked with every day, might be part of James's network was almost too much to process. My classroom, my office, my professional sanctuary suddenly felt compromised. Is there anywhere else you could stay? Cortez asked. Somewhere not associated with your usual patterns. Daniel spoke up immediately. She can stay with me. I have a guest room, and my building has security. I started to protest, to assert my independence, but the rational part of my brain overrode my pride. This wasn't about independence. It was about survival. Okay, I agreed finally. I'll pack some things tonight. As we left the office, the weight of what we'd learned pressed down on me. The James I'd married, the man I'd shared a bed with for 10 years, had been meticulously planning my demise, had documented my routines, my vulnerabilities, had hired people to watch me. The violation went beyond betrayal into something far more sinister. We'll get through this, Daniel said quietly as we walked to his car. Together. I nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in my throat. For the first time since that night in the restaurant 18 months ago, I allowed myself to feel the full extent of my fear, not just of James, but of the reality that I might never truly be free of the web he'd woven around my life. Living in Daniel's apartment was an adjustment. After 18 months of reclaiming my independence, I suddenly found myself packing essential items, arranging for my classes to be temporarily moved online, and explaining to my department chair that I needed to work remotely due to personal security concerns. I didn't mention the FBI investigation or the possibility that someone in university administration might be connected to James. Until we knew who it was, everyone was a potential threat. Daniel's place was larger than mine. A corner unit on the 12th floor of a modern building with security guards and a keycard elevator. The guest room had its own bathroom and a desk where I could set up my laptop for remote teaching. In other circumstances, it might have felt like a natural progression in our relationship. Instead, it felt like another disruption. Another way James was still controlling my life from behind bars. "Make yourself at home," Daniel said, helping me bring in the last of my bags. I cleared out half the closet and the top 2 dresser drawers. "Thank you," I replied, touched by his thoughtfulness despite the circumstances. "I'm sorry about all this." He set down my suitcase and turned to face me. "You have nothing to apologize for, Melissa. None of this is your fault." "It feels like it is sometimes," I admitted, sinking onto the edge of the bed. "Like I should have seen what kind of man he really was before I married him. Or at least, before he had a decade to plan. This," I gestured vaguely, encompassing the situation we found ourselves in. Daniel sat beside me. "James fooled everyone. His colleagues, his friends, you, Rebecca, me. He's a predator who deliberately created a perfect facade. That's not on you." I leaned against his shoulder, drawing comfort from his steady presence. "I keep thinking about what Rebecca said, that he has people everywhere, that even with him in custody, we're not safe. The FBI is taking it seriously," Daniel reminded me. "We have protection, and now we know what we're dealing with." That night, I tossed and turned in the unfamiliar bed, my mind racing through the new revelations. James had been planning to kill me, not just leave me, not just humiliate me, but to end my life for financial gain and convenience. The man I'd shared meals with, holidays with, a bed with for 10 years had been calculating my death while kissing me goodbye in the mornings. Around 2 in the morning, I gave up on sleep and wandered into the kitchen for a glass of water. I found Daniel already there, sitting at the counter with his own glass. "Nightmares?" he asked softly. I nodded. "You too?" "Different ones now," he admitted. "Used to be about Rebecca betraying me. Now, they're about what might have happened if you hadn't found that text message when you did." We sat in companionable silence for a while, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows. "I spoke with Rebecca today," Daniel said finally. "On the phone." I turned to look at him, surprised. "What did she say?" He ran a finger around the rim of his glass, gathering his thoughts. "She apologized. For everything. Not just the affair, but for not seeing what James really was, sooner. For not warning me directly." He paused. "She said she truly loved me, at least at first, before James approached her with his mentorship offer." "Do you believe her?" I asked gently. "I don't know," he sighed. "Parts of it, maybe. I think she got caught up in something bigger than she expected, made terrible choices, and by the time she realized how dangerous James really was, she was already trapped." He looked up at me. "Does that make sense?" "More than I'd like to admit," I replied. "I'm starting to think that's what James does. He finds people with vulnerabilities, with ambitions, and he exploits them. He did it to Rebecca with her career aspirations. He did it to me with my trust and belief in our marriage." "He's a manipulator," Daniel agreed. "A skilled one." The next morning, Agent Michaels called with a development. "We've identified one of James's associates, a private investigator named Victor Mercer. We believe he was conducting surveillance on both of you before James and Rebecca fled the country." "And now?" I asked, dreading the answer. "He's been active again. Our team observed him near your university campus yesterday." My blood ran cold. "Did you arrest him?" "Not yet. We're tracking him, hoping he leads us to others in the network. But we wanted you to be aware. Stay vigilant, and remember, no predictable patterns." After the call, Daniel and I discussed our options. We agreed that I would continue teaching remotely, while he would still go to his office, but with an FBI agent discreetly monitoring the building. We would vary our routines, never leaving or returning home at the same time 2 days in a row. "It feels like we're the ones being punished," I said bitterly as we worked out our schedules. "James is in a cell, but we're the ones living in a cage." 2 days later, Assistant U.S. Attorney Cortez requested another meeting. This time, Rebecca Wilson was present, accompanied by her own attorney, a sharp-looking woman named Sarah Levin. Rebecca looked better than she had during our first meeting, her posture straighter, her eyes clearer, though still shadowed with worry. "We've uncovered additional information about James's network," Cortez began, "much of it thanks to Ms. Wilson's continued cooperation." Rebecca nodded slightly, her eyes meeting mine briefly, before returning to the folder in front of her. "We now believe we've identified the university connection," Michaels continued. "Harold Griffith, the Assistant Dean of Finance for your department." I felt the floor drop out from under me. "Harold? But he's been with the university for 20 years. He attended our wedding. And he has gambling debts that make him vulnerable to exploitation," Cortez explained. "Financial records show payments from one of James's shell companies to accounts linked to Griffith, beginning about 3 years ago." "What was he doing for James?" Daniel asked. Michaels glanced at Rebecca, who spoke for the first time. "Information, mostly. Student records, faculty schedules, building access. James was creating a detailed profile of Melissa's life at the university, when she'd be alone in her office, which parking structures she used, potential vulnerable points." I felt sick. Harold had always been kind to me, had helped me navigate the university bureaucracy when I was first hired. To think he'd been feeding information to James, helping him plot against me. "We'll be bringing him in for questioning today," Cortez assured me. "But there's something else you should know." She hesitated, glancing at Michaels. "James has requested a meeting with you, Professor Adams." "With me?" I stared at her in disbelief. "Why would I ever agree to that?" "You wouldn't. Michael said firmly. We're denying the request, of course. But the fact that he's asking now, after maintaining silence since his arrest, concerns us. He's planning something, Rebecca said quietly. We all turned to look at her. James doesn't make requests without a purpose. If he wants to see Melissa, it's because it serves his strategy somehow. What strategy? Daniel asked, frustration evident in his voice. He's in federal custody, denied bail, facing decades in prison. What could he possibly hope to accomplish now? Rebecca looked at him directly for the first time. James always has contingencies within contingencies. He sees people as pieces on a chessboard, expendable, useful only as long as they advance his position. And what position is he advancing from a detention cell? I challenged. I don't know, she admitted. But I know James. The fact that he's asking for this meeting means he believes he still has moves to make. After the meeting, Daniel and I walked to a nearby park, both needing fresh air to process the new information. FBI agents followed at a discreet distance, their presence now a constant shadow in our lives. Do you think she's right? Daniel asked, as we sat on a bench overlooking a small pond. That James still has some kind of plan? I considered the question, thinking back to the decade I'd spent with James. His meticulous nature, his ability to anticipate problems and prepare solutions long before they arose. It was what had made him successful in business, what had made me feel safe and protected during our marriage. Now, those same qualities terrified me. Yes, I said finally, I do. James doesn't accept defeat. Ever. Even when we were just playing board games, he would rather flip the table than lose gracefully. I shook my head, remembering. I used to think it was just competitive spirit. Now I realize it was something much darker. So what do we do? Daniel's hand found mine on the bench between us. We keep being careful, I replied, and we trust the FBI to do their job. But even as I said it, doubt gnawed at me. James had evaded capture for 18 months, had built a network so complex that even now, with him in custody, we were still discovering its reach. If Rebecca was right, if he was still maneuvering from his cell, what else might he have planned? That evening, as Daniel prepared dinner, my phone rang with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Professor Adams? A woman's voice, unfamiliar. My name is Dr. Elaine Foster. I'm a forensic psychologist consulting with the FBI on James Adams's case. How did you get this number? I asked cautiously. Agent Michaels provided it. He suggested I speak with you directly, rather than scheduling another formal meeting. She paused. I've been conducting psychological evaluations of your ex-husband. I sat down, suddenly needing the support. And? James exhibits classic traits of psychopathy. Lack of empathy, superficial charm, grandiose sense of self-worth, pathological lying. But there's something else that concerns me more immediately. What's that? I asked, my mouth dry. His absolute certainty that he'll be free soon. Most defendants in his position show anxiety, depression, anger. James displays none of that. Instead, he seems patient, as if he's simply waiting for something to happen. Her words sent a chill through me. Something like what? That's why I'm calling you. You lived with him for 10 years. You know him in ways his business associates don't. Has he ever mentioned contingency plans? Specific strategies for worst-case scenarios? I thought back through our marriage, trying to remember any conversations that might be relevant. He always had backup plans for business deals, multiple exit strategies. He used to say that only amateurs rely on Plan A. What about people? Did he have particular individuals he trusted absolutely? People who might act on his behalf without direct instructions? An image flashed in my mind. A dinner party years ago. James deep in conversation with a man I'd only met that night. Victor, something. The same name Michaels had mentioned. There was someone, Victor Mercer, private investigator. James hired him occasionally for corporate background checks, but they seemed closer than a typical business relationship. Mercer, Dr. Foster repeated, the sound of typing audible in the background. Yes, He's on our watch list. Anyone else? I racked my brain, trying to recall other names, other connections. There was a lawyer, not his main attorney, but someone he consulted for what he called special situations. Lawrence, or Lawrence Parker, I think. More typing. Thank you, Professor Adams. This is helpful. One last question. In your opinion, what would James value most right now? What would be his priority? The answer came to me immediately, with a certainty that surprised even me. Control. James needs to feel in control, especially when circumstances suggest otherwise, and revenge against anyone he believes has wronged him. Including you? Especially me, I said quietly. In his mind, I'm the one who started this, by discovering his affair, by confronting him publicly, by not playing the role of the deceived wife who looks the other way. After the call ended, I sat motionless, Dr. Foster's questions echoing in my mind. What was James waiting for? What contingency had he set in motion that made him so certain of his freedom? Daniel found me still sitting there, lost in thought. Who was that? He asked, concern evident in his voice. A psychologist working with the FBI, I explained, relaying the conversation. She thinks James is waiting for something to happen, something that will change everything. Daniel's expression darkened. Then we need to find out what it is before it does. But neither of us knew where to start, what hidden plan might be unfolding around us, while we remained in the dark, waiting for James's next move. The next morning dawned with a tense stillness. For 3 days, we'd been living in this heightened state of vigilance, varying our routines, checking for surveillance, communicating through encrypted channels with the FBI agents assigned to our case. The strain was beginning to show in both of us. Dark circles under Daniel's eyes, a tightness around my mouth that wouldn't ease. Coffee? Daniel offered, already pouring a cup before I could answer. It had become our morning ritual, this small gesture of normalcy amid the chaos. Thanks, I said, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. Any updates from Michaels? Daniel shook his head. Nothing yet. They're still questioning Harold Griffith, but he's lawyered up. The betrayal of my colleague still stung. Harold, who had congratulated me on my tenure, who had brought homemade cookies to department meetings, secretly feeding information to James for years. The university was conducting its own investigation now, reviewing every document Harold had accessed, every schedule he'd had visibility into. My phone rang. Agent Michaels. I put it on speaker so Daniel could hear. We've had a development, Michaels said without preamble. Victor Mercer was apprehended last night, attempting to access the evidence room at our field office. Daniel and I exchanged alarmed glances. What was he after? I asked. We're still determining that, but initial interviews suggest he was trying to retrieve or destroy something specific related to James's case. Michaels paused. He's not talking much, but he did say one thing that concerns us. When asked about his objective, he said, "It doesn't matter. The countdown has already started." A chill ran through me. Countdown to what? That's what we're trying to determine. We've increased security at the detention center where James is being held and placed Rebecca Wilson in protective custody. We'd like to move you both to a safe house until we understand what's happening. 2 hours later, we were settled in a nondescript suburban home with agents stationed outside and a security team monitoring the perimeter. The house was comfortable but sterile, a place designed for temporary occupation, not living. Home, sweet home, Daniel said with forced lightness, setting down our hastily packed bags in the living room. Just until they figure out what James is planning, I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. It can't be much longer now. But even as I said it, doubt nagged at me. James had always played the long game, setting pieces in motion months or years before they were needed. What if this, the arrest, the detention, everything, was somehow part of his plan? My phone rang again, an unknown number. Agent Michaels had given us new secure phones, so this call was coming to my original device, which I'd kept only for emergencies. Don't answer it, Daniel warned. It might be important, I countered. staring at the screen. Someone from the university who doesn't have my new number. Before Daniel could object further, I accepted the call. Hello? Silence. Then a mechanical voice, obviously computer-generated. Melissa Adams. Contingency protocol activated. 48 hours to compliance. Who is this? I demanded, my heart racing. Check your email. Confirm receipt by replying acknowledged within 1 hour, or consequences will be accelerated. The call ended. Daniel was already reaching for his phone to contact Michaels, while I fumbled with mine to check my email. A new message had arrived seconds ago from an encrypted address. Final notice. James Adams has authorized implementation of contingency protocols. Evidence has been placed with third parties to be released to federal authorities in 48 hours, unless countermanding instructions are received. This evidence will implicate Daniel Matthews and Melissa Adams in financial crimes connected to North Star Marketing. Compliance instructions to follow after acknowledgement. It's blackmail, I whispered, showing Daniel the screen. He's threatening to frame us for his crimes. Daniel read the message, his expression hardening. He can't possibly have evidence against us for crimes we didn't commit. He doesn't need real evidence, I realized, James's methods suddenly becoming clear. He just needs convincing forgeries, documents with our signatures that Harold Griffith could have obtained, financial transactions that look suspicious without context. If he's been planning this for years, we forwarded the email to Michaels, who arrived at the safe house within the hour, bringing Assistant U.S. Attorney Cortez and, to my surprise, Rebecca Wilson. We need to understand exactly what James might have prepared, Michaels explained as we gathered in the living room. Ms. Wilson has agreed to help us interpret the threat and identify potential countermeasures. Rebecca looked pale but composed, dressed in a simple blouse and slacks. This is classic James, she said after reading the email. He creates insurance policies against everyone. I was subjected to the same tactic when I threatened to leave him in Bali. What kind of evidence could he possibly have manufactured? Daniel asked. Rebecca sighed. With Harold Griffith's help, your signatures on documents you never saw. Backdated emails that appear to show your knowledge of the scheme. Financial transactions through accounts established in your names. James excels at creating paper trails. Can he really implicate us from a detention cell? I asked Michaels. Not directly, the agent replied. But if he set this in motion before his arrest, with the right people in place to execute it on his command, he left the implication hanging. So, what do we do? Daniel asked. We can't comply with whatever he's going to demand. And we can't ignore it, Cortez added grimly. If his fabricated evidence is convincing enough, it could at minimum complicate our case against him, and at worst, expose you both to investigation. Rebecca leaned forward, her expression intense. There's another option. We beat him at his own game. All eyes turned to her. What do you mean? I asked cautiously. James thinks in patterns, in systems, she explained. I worked alongside him for years. I know how he structures his contingency plans. She looked at me directly. And so do you, Melissa. You lived with him for a decade. I started to object, but stopped, considering her words. I did know James's patterns, his habits, his methods, his twisted logic. He always keeps the original evidence somewhere he controls personally, I said slowly, memories surfacing. He never trusts others with the only copy. Rebecca nodded eagerly. Exactly. And he has specific locations, secure deposit boxes, storage units, hidden safes, that he maintains under aliases even his closest associates don't know about. How does that help us? Cortez asked. We've searched all his known properties. Not all of them, Rebecca countered. James had places he never told anyone about. Not me, not his attorneys, not even Victor Mercer. How do you know about them then? Daniel asked skeptically. Rebecca hesitated. During our time in Bali, when James's paranoia was at its worst, he would sometimes talk in his sleep. Fragments, mostly, but enough that I started piecing things together. Locations, access codes, names of aliases. And you never mentioned this before? Michaels's tone was sharp with suspicion. I didn't know if they were real or just paranoid delusions, she admitted. But after what happened with Mercer trying to access the evidence room, I think James has a failsafe, something he believes is untouchable, that gives him the confidence to make these threats. For the next several hours, we worked with Rebecca, Michaels, and Cortez to compile a list of possible locations, properties James might have acquired under aliases, places with personal significance that wouldn't appear in his financial records. There was a storage facility near his childhood home, I recalled. He mentioned it once, said his father kept things there when they moved around a lot. And the boathouse at Lake Meridian, Rebecca added. He took me there once, said it had belonged to his grandfather. By evening, we had a list of 7 potential locations. Michaels dispatched teams to investigate each one while we waited at the safe house, the clock ticking down on James's 48-hour deadline. What if we're wrong? Daniel asked quietly as we sat in the kitchen after the others had left. What if there's no physical evidence to find, just digital files set to release automatically? Then we face it, I said, with more courage than I felt. Together. We know we're innocent. Eventually, the truth will come out. He reached across the table, taking my hand. When did you become so strong? I gave him a tired smile. When I had no other choice. The next morning brought news. The team investigating the Lake Meridian boathouse had discovered a hidden safe room beneath the floorboards. Inside were dozens of files, external hard drives, and recording devices. We're processing everything now, Michaels reported over the secure line. Initial review suggests we've found what we're looking for. Templates for forged documents implicating both of you, along with several others James apparently planned to use as scapegoats if necessary. Relief washed over me, followed quickly by renewed tension. He'll know we've found it. Yes, Michaels agreed, which is why we're accelerating our timeline. We're transferring James to a maximum security facility today, and we've located 2 more of his associates, Lawrence Parker, the attorney you mentioned, and a former IT specialist from North Star who appears to have been helping with the digital side of the operation. The hours that followed passed in a blur of updates and strategy sessions. The evidence recovered from the boathouse provided a roadmap to James's entire network. Names, locations, payment records, blackmail material he held on various associates to ensure their loyalty. It's like finding the keys to the kingdom, Cortez said during a briefing at the safe house. With this, we can dismantle his entire operation. As the 48-hour deadline approached, we received another email. Final instruction. Melissa Adams will visit James Adams at the detention center, alone, at the scheduled time tomorrow. Further instructions will be provided in person. Absolutely not, Daniel said immediately. It's not happening, Michaels agreed. We have what we need now. You don't have to engage with him at all. But something about the message nagged at me. What if there's more? What if what we found at the boathouse isn't everything? It's a risk we'll have to take, Cortez said firmly. We're not sending you into a meeting with him. That's exactly what he wants. That night, as Daniel slept restlessly beside me in the safe house's spare bedroom, I made a decision. James had controlled my life for too long, first through marriage, then through fear. It was time to face him on my terms. The next morning, I informed Michaels of my decision. I want to meet with him, I said, but on our terms, not his. Full security, recording devices, agents watching through one-way glass. I need to look him in the eye and end this. After hours of debate and planning, they agreed. The meeting was arranged for that afternoon. Not at the detention center as James had demanded, but at the federal building, with every possible security measure in place. You don't have to do this, Daniel said, as we prepared to leave the safe house. Yes, I do, I replied, straightening my shoulders. For both of us. For all the months we've lived in fear. This ends today. James sat at a metal table in an interrogation room, his hands cuffed to a ring in the center. He looked up as I entered, his expression shifting from expectation to surprise, then quickly recalibrating to calculated confidence. "Melissa," he said, his voice as smooth as ever. Not quite the setting I'd requested, but I'm adaptable. I sat across from him, maintaining a calm facade despite the turmoil inside me. "Hello, James. You've lost weight," he observed casually, as if we were meeting for lunch rather than in a secure federal facility. "The stress must be getting to you." "Cut the small talk," I said. "I'm here. What do you want?" He smiled, that familiar expression that once made me feel special, and now only revealed the predator beneath, direct as always. "It's one of the things I've always appreciated about you. I didn't come for compliments." "No, you came because you're afraid." He leaned forward slightly. "You should be. What I've set in motion has been stopped," I interrupted. "The boathouse at Lake Meridian. The safe room. We found everything, James." For the briefest moment, his composure slipped, a flicker of genuine surprise crossing his features before he masked it. "Clever girl," he said softly. "How did you know?" "Because I knew you. For 10 years I saw how you operated, how you thought. I just never recognized the monster behind the method until it was almost too late." James's expression hardened. "You have no idea what you're dealing with. What you found at the lake is just one piece of a much larger puzzle." "Maybe," I acknowledged, "but we're dismantling your network person by person. Victor Mercer, Lawrence Parker, Harold Griffith, even your IT specialist from North Star. They're all in custody, James. They're all talking." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "They know nothing. They know enough." I leaned forward. "It's over, James. Whatever you were planning, whatever you thought would happen, it's finished." "Nothing is ever truly finished," he replied, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "You should know that by now." "This is," I said with finality. "I'm not afraid of you anymore." His eyes narrowed. "You should be." "No." I stood up. "I spent 18 months looking over my shoulder, jumping at shadows, letting you control my life even from thousands of miles away. I'm done." "You'll never be done with me, Melissa," he hissed, his mask of civility slipping further. "I'm part of you now. Always will be." I looked down at him, seeing him clearly perhaps for the first time. Not the successful businessman I'd married, not the criminal mastermind who'd evaded capture, but a desperate man grasping for control as everything crumbled around him. "Goodbye, James," I said, turning toward the door. "This isn't over," he called after me, his voice rising. "You think you've won? This is just the beginning." I didn't look back. Outside, Daniel waited with Agent Michaels and a team of agents. "Are you okay?" he asked immediately, searching my face. "Yes," I said, and meant it. "Better than I've been in a long time." In the days that followed, the full extent of James's operation was uncovered. Multiple arrests were made across 3 countries. Bank accounts were frozen, evidence secured, witnesses interviewed. Rebecca Wilson's testimony proved crucial, providing context and connections that might otherwise have remained hidden. 3 months later, James Adams pleaded guilty to reduced charges in exchange for information about his international connections. The plea deal ensured he would spend at least 25 years in prison, effectively a life sentence given his age. Rebecca received a significantly reduced sentence in exchange for her cooperation, 5 years with the possibility of parole after 3. Before beginning her sentence, she met with Daniel one last time for the closure they both needed. "I'm sorry," she told him simply, "for everything." "I know," he replied. "Part of me will always wonder what was real and what wasn't." "The beginning was real," she said softly. "Before James, before everything got so complicated. That much I can promise you." He nodded, accepting what closure she could offer. "Take care of yourself, Rebecca." As for Daniel and me, we moved forward cautiously, healing from wounds that ran deeper than either of us had initially understood. We sold both our apartments and bought a house together in a new neighborhood, a fresh start on our terms. One evening, as we sat on our new patio watching the sunset, Daniel turned to me. "Do you ever think about what might have happened If you hadn't picked up his phone that night? If you hadn't seen that message? I considered the question carefully. Sometimes. But then I think about how much worse it could have been. If we hadn't discovered the truth when we did, if James's plans had progressed further. I shuddered at the thought. Daniel took my hand. I never thought I'd be grateful for a betrayal, but in a strange way, I am. It brought me to you. I smiled, feeling the weight of the past finally beginning to lift. From the worst experience of my life came the best relationship I've ever known. 6 months later, we stood together in the courthouse as the judge issued the final ruling on the asset forfeiture related to James's crimes. The money recovered from his hidden accounts would be used to compensate his victims, including North Star Marketing and several individuals who had been harmed by his schemes. You are free to move forward with your lives, the judge told us. The monitoring and security protocols are no longer necessary. That night, we celebrated our freedom, not just from the legal proceedings or the security measures, but from the shadow James had cast over our lives for so long. I have something for you, Daniel said, handing me a small box. Inside was a key. Simple, ordinary, unremarkable. What's this? I asked. A key to our front door, he said. I had all the locks changed today. No more security codes, no more FBI-installed systems, just regular locks, regular keys, a regular life. Jeez, I held the key tightly, tears springing to my eyes at this simple symbol of normality. There's something else, he continued, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small velvet box. Unlike the one I'd found in James's nightstand years ago, this one wasn't hidden, wasn't meant for someone else. It was offered openly, honestly. I know we've both been hurt, Daniel said, his voice steady but vulnerable. I know we both carry scars from what happened. But I also know that what we've built together is stronger because of it, not in spite of it. He opened the box to reveal a simple, elegant ring. I'm not asking for an answer right now. I'm just letting you know that whenever you're ready, whether that's tomorrow or next year, I'll be here. No secrets, no hidden agendas, just us, building something real together. I looked at the ring, then at Daniel, this man who had walked through fire alongside me, who had seen me at my most broken and never flinched. For a moment, James's voice echoed in my memory, "You'll never be done with me." But as I looked into Daniel's eyes, I realized James was wrong. The past would always be part of our story, but it no longer had the power to control our future. Yes, I said simply. Not tomorrow, not next year. Now, yes. As Daniel slipped the ring onto my finger, I felt the last pieces of my old life fall away. James Adams had taken so much from me. My trust, my security, nearly my life. But he had failed in his ultimate goal. He hadn't broken me. Instead, I had emerged stronger, wiser, and finally, truly free. In the end, the greatest revenge wasn't confronting him in that interrogation room or seeing him led away in handcuffs. It was this moment, choosing love over fear, choosing to build rather than destroy, choosing to live fully in a future he had tried so desperately to prevent. To new beginnings, Daniel said, raising his glass. To us, I replied, leaving the past where it belonged, behind us. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment below. What city are you watching from? And if your heart tells you to, feel free to leave me a tip on Buy Me a Coffee. Just check the first pinned comment. Thanks for keeping me company and for the coffee, and I'll see you in the next story.